Before we dive into the video that you guys are about to watch, I wanted to come to you and explain a couple things that we have going on here at TA Targets. There are many changes that are coming, and some of them you might have already seen at this point. You might have seen some new channels, new pages, different branding and logos and things like that. It's all good stuff. It's just a progression of our company, our team, and our desire to affect culture. But I do have some bad news. This video that you're about to watch is probably one of the last night vision videos that you're gonna see on the TA Targets channel. Now, that's not a bad thing per se, because I have some good news. The reason it's one of the last channel videos about night vision is because we have a totally new YouTube channel, a totally new brand, new website, and a new company launched to service people looking to get into night vision. And this is an evolution of our company that honestly, I would have never predicted back in 2015. When we started TA Targets in 2015, our objective was just simply to make the best steel targets that we could with the materials that we could find. And what evolved from that simple, humble beginning was a realization that we were destined to impact culture. And what I realized as we got into 2020, 2021, and ultimately into this year, is that not only do we have a calling to do this, we have a duty to do this. And so our expansion, while it might seem a little strange to you on the surface level, is all purpose-built in order to reach more people and affect our culture in a more powerful, better way than we could have done just through TA Targets. So guys, while this might be an end of an era for the TA Targets channel, it's the beginning of a totally new chapter. And if you want to stay up to date with those videos and you're into night vision and you want to see what we're about, it's the same team, same people, but our new brand is called Arkayne. So if you want to see all of that information, see our new website and that YouTube channel, hit the links in the description. But guys, that's enough for now. Let's dive into this video and talk about night hunting rigs.
Welcome, friends, to two guys in a barn of questionable integrity filled with combustible materials, smoking cigars. You have found the land of the crazy, and we are at Site B. And you know, when we go to Site B, things get weird. But this topic, I think, is one that's fascinating, and I think that it's going to help you guys as well as you embark on your journey into the darkness. And as you know, here at Arkayne, we are all about the darkness and the lifestyle around the darkness and having tools and equipment that allow us to function well in the darkness. So I have Ethan here. You guys probably have seen him in other content surrounding Site B. The reason I have Ethan here is he is a certified predatory hunter. Predator hunter. Predatory hunter. In other words, you find furry creatures that deserve to die.
They usually ask for it.
So anyway, what kind of, okay, give people a little bit of a rundown of what predator hunting would consist of. Like, what are you targeting when you're out hunting?
Any type of canine, anything that's carries fangs, that kills.
So foxes, coyotes, raccoons, essentially anything that picks on your chickens.
Essentially.
So in Pennsylvania, pretty much the only predators that we have would be the foxes, coyotes, and I mean, there's other stuff that you can shoot at night as well. And we recently, I guess 2 or 3 years, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, we got semi-automatic centerfire rifles that we could actually hunt predators with. How long ago was that?
It's been 2 or 3 years for sure.
Yeah, so
since that came about, but it was definitely a major step in the right direction for PA.
Yeah, the Game Commission pushed back for a long time. For a long time, if you wanted to hunt predators in Pennsylvania, you could not use an AR-15 or anything like an AR-15. So as crazy as that might sound to you guys that are outside of the state of Pennsylvania, that was our reality. You had to use manually operated firearms for the longest time.
It was very painful.
And there's no secret, though, because of that and the prevalence of them now and the fact that we can hunt with them legally in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of people that have questions about how to set up a proper hunting rig in the darkness. Now, we all know that night vision and thermal is extremely expensive, so people want to spend their money one time and have something that's going to last them. Would you probably agree with that, Ethan?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions to be answered. I get a lot of questions from customers on some very fine details every time that they're considering dropping anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 on night vision and thermal, whatever that might be, and deciding what you're doing with that unit is the first thing that you need to figure out.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that don't know, if you reach out currently to Arkayne, you're looking for thermal or night vision, probably your email is going to land across Ethan's lap. He's going to be working, and also with our customer service team, he's going to be working with you to help you figure out exactly what you need in a unit. So these questions like this, though, sometimes it's hard for us to get to every single question because there's literally thousands of questions that people are going to have. So we want to make videos like this to be able to help you guys along on your path. So tonight, the topic is hunting rigs. And what I want to do to kind of lay out this video is I want, Ethan, you to go over your hunting rig. I'm going to ask some questions about it, some hows, whys, how you have it set up. We'll probably have some B-roll and stuff that's playing over us talking so you guys can get a closer look at the guns. And then I'm going to go over my build as well. And then we're going to give you a little bit of a recipe that I think you could follow to build a quality hunting rig for the darkness. So first of all, Ethan, I think one of the things that people overlook, but I think it's important to talk about, is the rifle that you're using. So maybe go over like the barrel length, caliber currently. And I know you have a special build that you're working on, but for now, let's go.
It's a secret.
Let's go
we
over.
Can talk about that later.
Yeah, let's go over the current one. Why don't you give them a rundown of what the foundation is of that build?
So the current rig's a 16-inch 5.56, and 16-inch is about right when you put a suppressor on it. You get the most velocity, but then it's not excessively long with the suppressor on it. It's still a pretty big rig, but when you're out in the middle of a field on a tripod, it doesn't matter too much. It's not like I'm trying to stick this rig in a backpack. I have other guns to do that with.
And that's a good point too. Like obviously the build is going to depend on what the people are doing. When we're talking bag guns,
exactly.
Tiny's king. When
smaller the better.
Now when you're out in the field, and it was kind of an awakening as you started taking me hunting. It's like, man, I don't want to carry this big freaking heavy rifle around everywhere, but it's like you're not. You're setting it up on a tripod.
You walk a little bit, if at all, 20 yards from the truck sometimes. Lock the gun in the tripod and start pressing buttons.
I like pressing buttons. So at this point, so 16-inch, 5.56, you mentioned suppressor. So why don't you tell them the suppressor and also, we'll dive into the why of the suppressor toward the end of the video, but what suppressor are you currently running?
So I'm running a hybrid 46. It's just the one I got multiple years ago. I haven't really upgraded in a while. It's past due. Just haven't made it a priority because the one I got works.
And suppressors, I think, are a huge key. Like I said, at the end of the video here, when we give you guys a recipe, we're going to talk a little bit more about suppressors and why. If you look at both the builds in the background, we have cans on both of them.
I always run suppressed. You will not catch me out hunting at night without a suppressor. I won't do it. I don't even like hunting with there's a lot of people that obviously don't have cans, and I don't even enjoy hunting with people that don't have cans. I ought to buy a extra can just to be able to put on other people's guns for them.
We need loader.
Here, take this. You're not hunting with me without this can on that gun.
And it's funny because we've been in 07, 02 for quite a few years now, and we still don't have a whole collection of cans, even though we could just do it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What are we waiting on?
I don't know. I don't like giving more paperwork to the ATF, but that's another video for another day, folks. So we've got the 16-inch 5.56 in your build. Is there any special trigger or anything you're running on that?
Nothing crazy. I think I don't even remember. I think I got a Geisley in it. It might be a two-stage, one of their two-stage triggers.
You might be running the SSAE.
Probably. It's light, it's clean, which is extremely important when you're shooting distance and very small targets, because I mean, you get down to it, a fox at 200 yards, its rib cage is probably 6 inches.
Yeah, and depending on the size, sometimes smaller.
Yeah, very
and
small.
And how they're positioned.
Facing you sideways,
right. You could have a target that's only 4 inches potentially. So yeah, having that, the ability to take those shots cleanly is very important. And on top of that, being able to see is obviously critically important, because we're out in pitch black. I mean, sometimes there's full moon and stuff. We have night vision and thermal. Thermal doesn't care about the full moon, but we're out sometimes in very bad conditions with these optics. So why don't you give a rundown of the current optic? I know it's a shiny new toy for us.
It's fresh. It's similar. So I'll start by saying all last Predator season, I ran a Pulsar Trail 2 XP50 LRF. It was a great unit. Worked great. Killed hundreds of things with it. It was a good unit, but it was just missing something. It was missing a little bit of clarity. And the iRay products have been showing themselves to be very clear in content, other people's content. And I was like, yep, that's definitely the next one.
So which model did we end up getting?
It's the RH50. So it's the 3X model.
You and I kind of went back and forth on that a little bit, which I think I'm going to hold off a little bit. We were debating, because don't they have a 2X model?
They have a 2X model.
So, yeah.
It's the RH35. Then they have the RH25, which is the 1X model, and we'll get to that. But that particular unit, when you have something like an MH25 on your helmet, like I do, you have the 1X version in the helmet, so you can scan quickly, cover ground, but then use the 3X on the gun to punch in a little tighter for that fox that's sitting there at 200 yards. Gives you a little bit better picture.
Yeah, for sure. So is there anything else notable? Your tripod. That's a good thing to talk about. What tripod are you currently running?
It's a cheapie. I got to upgrade that too. It's a bog tripod.
And that's one of the saddle kind. It kind of just clamps on the gun.
It's not. It's
so
not great.
What's the pro and con of that, real quick? I mean, you've played around a little bit with the Vortex that's behind us. The Vortex, I have a Picatinny clamp. What would you see as a pro and con to that for people that are looking to get into night hunting?
So with the saddle, you got to really pay attention to like where you have lights mounted, where you have different things at, because the saddle comes up around the side of the gun so far.
Yeah.
If you got anything at the wrong spot, the saddle doesn't work.
For sure. Yeah, I think
it's not a light setup either. That tripod's very heavy.
For sure.
And again, it's killed a lot of stuff. It's proven itself, but at some point I'm going to be upgrading to a carbon fiber here, probably this season at some point.
Yeah, so 16-inch 5.56. We've got one of the iRay, and that's a 640 core. Is it 640 by 480 or is it 512?
I think it's 512. Almost all the iRay stuff's coming in at 640 by 512.
And real quick for you guys, we're talking about the resolution of the core, and that higher number, the 640. Anytime you hear us throwing around the term 640 core, we pretty much primarily run 640s at this point. I mean, we have played with some of the lower end. I don't even want to call it lower end. Which model scope was it that we had played with a little bit from iRay? It was one of the ones that looks like a rifle scope. Wasn't that 384?
Yeah, it's the Bolt.
Yeah.
The TL35. That unit's a 384 core. It's impressively clearer for being a 384 core. But yeah, we'll have one of them at some point.
Still not quite as clear as what you'll get out of a higher resolution, but that's the thing about the iRay products that I've seen. Even playing with that, I know the MH25 is a 640, RH is a 640, but playing around with the iRay units is insane. The amount of clarity that you get for them. So real quick, I also know you've played around with other setups. Ethan also has a PVS 30, which is a night vision clip-on that we've used, and you're using that as a loaner pretty much. I've borrowed that from you. I've run my 16-inch Khalil and borrowed his PVS 30. I know you've had other people putting that in front of their scopes. There's some clear benefits to that. Again, we'll talk about that in the recipe section. But real quick, I'm going to go over my build then, and then we'll get into what makes a good night hunting rig. So for mine, it's a 16-inch Zion 15. If you guys have followed any of our content over at TA Targets, you know that we love the Zion 15s out of the box. For, at this time of this video, I know I'm dating it by throwing a number. When we got these rifles, they were less than $1,000. We got a 1 and 8 twist rifle, which is a good happy medium between 1 and 7, 1 to 9. They suppress well, mid-length gas systems. I love those guns. They're just ready to rip out of the box. They're not really anything to write home about. I wouldn't say they're packed with crazy features, but they've got a good rail. They've got good fit and finish, and they're
gets
very
the job
accurate.
done.
They're very accurate with my hand loads, and they've killed a lot of things. We've had a lot of good luck with them. On top of my particular gun, I have a Vortex Razor HD 1 to 10. Not my favorite LPVO, but it does work pretty well. I usually don't run it on 10X because of the eye box relief. It gets a little wonky. But in front of my scope, what you've seen in the B-roll of this video is an RH25, which is a unique unit that we have videos on our YouTube channel. So you can definitely check that out. You can use it as a handheld, helmet mount, or a clip-on. Kind of referencing what Ethan said, he has an MH25 on his helmet so that he can scan wide fields in 1X and then be able to hone in with that iRay thermal unit, the dedicated thermal on his rifle, to be able to get those 3X shots on predators that come into the calls. The same thing could be done with an RH25. If you have a dedicated thermal on your gun, you could use the RH as a helmet-mounted unit as well.
For sure.
And you can use it helmet-mounted, clip-on, or dedicated thermal as well. It can run as a standalone.
If you're comparing the MH25 to the RH25, the MH25 doesn't have quite... I want to say that the screen size is a little bit bigger inside the RH25, which makes it a lot nicer when it's helmet mounted. It's just a higher quality, obviously, for an extra $2,000. It better be better, better be nicer. But
you can feel it. When you pick up the RH25, it's heavier, which is kind of a downside. But anyway, watch the video. We'll put a link in the description. You guys can watch for yourself. I run down all the specs and everything. We go deep into what the RH is and how it shines. But that's what I'm using. I'm running a Arkayne Co Omega 30 caliber can on my particular rifle, and I'm using the Vortex Radian carbon tripod. And inside of this particular rifle, I have the Geisley Super Dynamic Combat. So think of it as like a mil-spec trigger, but much cleaner. It has a very clean wall. I really like having a good wall on my trigger, something that I can feel. It doesn't break too soon. I don't really like those sketchy hair triggers. I want something that I can feel a wall and take a clean shot. So that's sort of the recipe. I've got my gun spray painted because I also hunt with it in the daylight, and I like to blend in wherever I go. Other than that, it's pretty much a stock Zion 15, nothing else to write home about. Sometimes if I'm running or borrowing Ethan's PVS 30 on one of my rifles, I might run a D-Ball D2, or I'll run a 640V, one of the Vampire lights with infrared, because when you're running that PVS 30, if the conditions are not perfect, you would want some supplemental infrared. Plus, it's nice to be able to see eyes as predators are coming in. So sometimes I'll switch up the builds like that. And we're often playing around with different optics and different setups so that we can give you guys good information. So you'll see that stuff changing quite a bit. So now that we got the builds out of the way, we've also established that weight is not the biggest factor. Now, I guess that does depend on where you guys live. I mean, if you can't just drive to your spots, maybe you will have to sacrifice a little bit of size to try to keep the weight down. But at the end of the day, when you start adding units and lights and tripods and all this other stuff.
That PVS 30 weighs 3 pounds alone.
Yeah, it's more than a scope. And you start adding these things together, especially with the 1 to 10, man. When I ran it with the 1 to 10, that 1 to 10 is a heavy scope. I think you had like 6 pounds of glass on that rifle.
For sure.
That is more than most rifles, like in glass.
Yeah, and then you put an IR light on it. Now the scope, the PVS 30, and the light to get combined weighs more than the gun.
Yeah, and it just depends what you're doing. So ultimately, I want to give everybody that's watching kind of a basic recipe, and I know that it's all over the place depending on the end use, but what would you say, in your opinion, Ethan, would be a good recipe to follow? And I think we should try to stay away from the niche ends of things, kind of be a broad performer, one that could be, close range, mid range. What's a good do-all recipe?
So, a couple things rolling through my mind right now to highlight about these two builds and the differences between them. And that's technically my dedicated thermal combined with the gun loaded is something like 8 to 9 pounds. And I know that when you add glass and a clip on, you're obviously going to creep up probably past the 10-pound mark. So if you're doing a lot of hunting and you got to do more walking or something like that, having a dedicated thermal is definitely a major advantage because it's lighter.
And on that note, I'm going to give a disadvantage and kind of a reason why I have my gun set up the way that I do, because I could slap a dedicated thermal on this. Now, what Ethan described is a pro for him because this rig is pretty... Is it fair to say it's a dedicated hunting rig?
Oh, yeah.
At this point?
That's the only thing I do with it.
So,
I mean, yeah, I would fight with it if I had to, too, honestly.
Oh, we could fight with that.
Dude, I've spent more time with that rifle than with any other rifle in my kit, so honestly, it'd probably be the best one to grab.
So for me, though, I use my particular rifle more in the day than in the night. I use it more for range stuff, medium distance shooting and just training in the day than I do at night. So for me, I have value in having a precision scope that can function really well in the day without needing heat signature. Now, the thermal like this one that's on his gun is freaking wild.
It will function in the day, no problem.
For sure, yeah. But I guess I mean the quality and the tech of thermal is making it so. Like I was looking at our steel targets. I remember looking at units 5, 6, 7 years ago that if you would look at a steel target at 200
you
yards,
could barely see it.
You couldn't even see it. You wouldn't even know what it was. Now I'm looking at it through this IRA unit we just got.
It's obvious.
It's obvious. Like you could shoot steel targets during the day. So what Ethan's saying is true. My only con to that is if you are mostly using it during the day and maybe you don't have 2 or 3 rifles, having a clip-on might be something to think about. But again, we're talking about a recipe for do-all. And I think for me personally, if somebody was out mostly hunting, I kind of feel like the dedicated thermal would be the way to go.
It's definitely the way to go. I've spending hours and hours and hours with the different setups. I hands down prefer the dedicated unit.
So let's go this route. Thermal, night vision. What would cause you to say get the PVS 30 or go with the thermal?
So
I know that's a hard one.
It's not that hard. Honestly, after I got dedicated thermal, I don't pick up the PVS 30. Hence why it's a loaner and I give it to other people. Be like, here's this $6,000 device. Why don't you just use it on your rig? Because I'd rather have the dedicated thermal. It's easier in speed, I guess I should say. It's so much faster to pick things up and then get shots off, and then you don't lose it either. Something could be running, and with the night vision,
if it jumps out of your eye for a split second, you're going to
have trouble, and it's going to be nearly impossible to find it again. But I can't tell you how many times I've shot something running, a running fox, a running coyote, that you can't do with night vision. You can. I can't say you can't. Yeah. I've seen it done, but it's substantially more difficult than with the dedicated thermal.
For sure. I've experienced that firsthand borrowing your PVS 30. So now that we got that optic kind of out of the way, typically a dedicated thermal for predator hunting is going to be the go-to. Do you think there's that big of a consideration between a 384 or 320 core, 640? Like, what should people really hone in on? Because price really becomes
you gotta weigh the price versus the amount of time you're spending behind the rig. I mean, when you look at, so the way I quantified it when I first bought my first 640 dedicated weapons mounted thermal, the picture that you're seeing when you're looking into the darkness, and the better the quality of that picture, the higher quality the entire experience feels like.
For sure.
It just makes for that much better of an experience when you're out in the dark. The more clarity you have, it totally changes the whole experience. If you're looking through a unit that's like a 320 core or something really blurry, you can do a lot of work with a 320 core, but it's not the same. The experience is not the same. It's not as enjoyable to me anymore.
So it kind of goes to that, like, I hate to say it, buy once, cry once theory. It's very easy to say, I'm just going to save a bunch of money and try to go with the lower quality thermal. In our experience, we found that it doesn't usually pay off. You end up, it's like, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to be real with you guys. You get into the night vision world, you're going to start off saying, I just need this one thing. You're going to have, it opens up this rabbit hole. It just eventually does. Yeah, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop ever. So when we're looking at these builds, so we would typically recommend, look at the higher quality cores. If it's totally out of your budget, we never recommend people go into tons of debt to have units, to be reckless with their finances. Obviously, get what you can afford. And we'll never shame someone. And honestly, like, somebody shows up to hunt with us and they have a 320, like,
I'm never going to shame anybody about anything. It's not, like I said, you can hunt with a 3 to 9, whatever,
like hunting old school
cheapest scope you could, Walmart scope you
could, what is it, Tasco? Yeah.
Something, the cheapest thing you could ever imagine with a red light. And if you're out there hunting and enjoying yourself, do it. But if you want to change the experience, get a thermal. You want to change the experience again, jump from a 384 core to a 640 core, and it's going to heighten the quality of the experience that you have.
And then on top of that, so we've got those optics out of the way. There's no, I should say, it shouldn't be a surprise that both of these guns behind us are 16-inch 5.56s. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to push a bullet with an accurate platform as fast as possible, because what we want is the maximum point blank range. What I mean by that is, what can our rifle do as far as aiming at the same location for as far as possible?
As far as possible. 0 at 200, minimal drop at 300. There's not many guns that do that.
So what you want to do is be able to see a fox and know, okay, if it's within 25 yards to 300 yards, where do I have to aim? And you don't have to sit there and turn turrets, or
you don't have to think
or do anything crazy. You can just go
point and shoot.
And that's the key. And you're building an AR-10 platform in 243 for that reason, to even get further out there with a flatter trajectory and something with a little bit more spelunk behind it. But
that's a good way to put it.
I think we'll cover that build in a future video. So we've got those 16-inch 5.56s. For years, I used to hunt around my dad's cabin with a 300 blackout, and I thought that was super cool. It was super compact, and in those areas, I didn't have permission to hunt with landowners or anything, so I was hiking into locations that were pretty remote, doing a lot of daytime hunting. So I thought the bag gun method was the best way. I've really changed what I think of a nighttime rig, and I really like to stick with a 16-inch 5.56. I like a gun that at 100 yards, I have less than 1-inch groups consistently. I can put down 9-round groups with this gun.
The smaller the group, the better.
Yeah,
the blackout just has too much variation in height and
in distance.
Exactly. I mean, you have that variation, and it makes it tough when you have a 6-inch, a 4-inch target at 187 yards, and it's like, well, how exactly much does this bullet drop at 187 yards? I have no idea. Well, with that gun, I'm aiming dead on and sending it, and it's going to connect. So it simplifies things. So all that to say, and this is a very
nuanced, maybe? Is that where you're
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and make a statement, and there's a lot of guys that are going to argue about it.
Send it.
But
No, I'm
send it
saying
as
you send it. I want you to make them argue.
the flatter the better, as flat as possible, especially for doing things like fox hunting, because it's such a small animal. Like if you're down in Texas and you're hunting pigs, totally different story. I mean, granted, if you're shooting piglets, they're just as small as a yearling red fox, but a full-grown pig, you got a whole lot more girth to hit.
Yeah.
Now, granted, a lot of these guys are going for headshots, so the window tightens, but
it's a different animal. And a lot of guys that do distance shooting and stuff, they have a lot of time to rotate turrets, make all these adjustments, and when you're out in the darkness, you just don't have that luxury to make those quick adjustments. So getting that out of the way with calibers, barrel length, and all that stuff, let's talk a little bit about those suppressors and why that's important. Because a lot of people like suppressors because they're sexy, they're cool, they're fun. But at the end of the day, when it comes to nighttime hunting, they're a very important tool. I just want you to give like 30 seconds of your thought about why you hunt with a suppressor.
So the biggest thing for me, I got permission on hundreds and hundreds of different people's properties. And the beautiful thing is when you're running night vision and thermal and you're shooting suppressed, I can get in, I can kill stuff, and I can get out. And I'll stop back in the following year, ask for permission. They'll be like, yeah, sure. Did you even hunt? Be like, yeah, I killed like 3 foxes within whatever, 200 yards of your house. They don't even know you're there. They don't have a clue. When you're inside, it's cold out. They got their windows shut. You're shooting suppressed. The less people know, the less alarmed people are, the better off you are when you're playing games in the dark.
For sure. I remember the first time I shot a raccoon at night with my suppressed 223. You and I were walking on a property behind my house. Up until then, all the predators I've shot in the past were unsuppressed. I remember rocking that raccoon and thinking, holy cow, my ears weren't ringing. The echo didn't go through the valley. Nobody would have heard that. That's with a 16-inch 5.56.
It's all about that experience level. Like just that
changes.
heightened level of experience. Like it just improves the experience so much to me that I don't have to worry about damaging my ears at the same time.
Or making people mad
or even
500
scaring
yards
somebody.
away.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, think about it. You take a 5.56 with no can in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, rock a couple rounds off, and it's weird. It's weird. Like if you were in your house and somebody was 400 yards away, and all of a sudden you hear bang, 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 and it's a loud rifle.
There's been twice last season. I think the most bullets I shot on one stand, I shot 7 rounds at one fox. He was running at 240 yards or something like that. I forget exactly how far it was. Full out, as fast as that fox could go, I was leading him by 6-8 feet probably. And I shot 7 times, and I'm within 150 yards of a cow barn. And that's another aspect of this, running suppressors. I don't want to spook every cow in that barn
or every dog in the neighborhood.
Exactly. So shooting suppressed, I can dump 7 rounds and nobody knows the wiser.
And you know what? The other cool thing, we've often killed multiple foxes on a stand because we've got cans.
It helps. It helps. They hear it, but they don't know exactly what it is. They might not know exactly where it came from. They get confused. Heck, sometimes they'll run at you instead of away from
It
you.
charged us last time. Ran right at us.
That'll rattle you.
Yeah. So the cans for us they're sort of a non-negotiable when it comes to hunting. Let's talk about tripods real quick. I know that if you're not in the predator space, you're not in night hunting with a tripod might seem a little weird unless you're out big game hunting or you're using sticks. I mean, people do that for deer and stuff, but it's sort of abnormal to be running around with a tripod. Why don't we just use bipods, Ethan?
They're not stable enough.
Also, vantage point. Like when you're on a tripod, you're standing 6 feet tall. That gun, you can see stuff. And on top of that, it is extremely stable. Like We're talking you can take shots 200-300 yards out with a tripod.
Standing, while you're standing, and consistently take that shot and make that shot every time. When if you were shooting offhand or you were shooting, you'd be too low in the grass on a bipod on the front of the gun. It's just,
you need that vantage point.
Tripods are the way to go.
And you think about foxes being only 6-8 inches off the ground. If there's any grass at all,
corn stubble,
you can't lay down and see. On top of that, another thing I like with the tripod is you're shooting down almost always. And that's another...
It's a safety thing. There's a lot of houses here in PA, so you got to be very mindful of, obviously, where your bullets are going, even in the dark.
Especially in the dark.
And that's one thing that the thermal shines with, is being able to know what's beyond your target as well. With these thermals have 2,000 plus yard detection.
So if your neighbor Billy Bob Joe is out there walking his dog,
you'd never know it with any type of night vision, but that thermal will show him when he's 1,000 yards.
For sure. So kind of wrapping up this video, give your closing thoughts of how hunting with a gun is applicable to like other areas of shooting.
So for me, I don't shoot as much on the range as I'd like to, but I spend a lot of time in the field hunting, calling predators, shooting like that. Let's put it this way. When you're hunting or doing anything in the dark, the difficulty level quadruples. It gets extremely difficult. The way I look at it, if you can do it in the dark, you're going to be able to do it in the light.
So yeah, I would agree that if you can do it in the night and you have a tool that can do it in total darkness, you got a skill set and some equipment that's going to equip you to be better prepared. And ultimately, what Arkayne is all about is equipping ourselves with modern fighting tools. And so there's a lot of crossover in the hunting realm that preps you for that. Now, I'm not going to say that Ethan and I are experts. We are learners just like you are. But we've had a unique opportunity to dive deep into this topic, deeper than most people will ever go. Because of that, we want to share this information with you guys. So I'm going to wrap this video up unless you had anything else to add for now on the topic of hunting rigs.
Not too much.
And guys, if you found this helpful, definitely leave us a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share this video with your friends. I mean, there's a lot of people that probably are going to disagree with us, but at the end of the day, this is a free country, and you can do what you want with your gun. We don't want you to do something just because we said we did it. I mean, if you're kind of on the fence, some of this information may have helped you. If you hate what we have to say, I mean, there's a thumb down button, and you can just troll us in the comments. But sometimes we get feisty if you troll us. So just a heads up, fair warning. You might get trolled back. But guys, for real, we appreciate you for tuning in. If they want to find you, Ethan, and some of your shenanigans, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Tactical Sense.
There's an underscore, right? Tactical underscore sense.
Yep, that's it.
We'll put that at the bottom of the screen here.
Message me there if you want.
Yeah, guys, if you're looking for optics, you're looking for night vision gear, equipment, accessories for your firearm, please message us. Hit us up on the Arkayne page. Send us an email to our customer service team or DM Ethan directly on Instagram, and we would love to get you guys set up into some units. We're not high-pressure salespeople. We're not trying to push you any one direction.
I'm going to give you all the information you could possibly ever want and then some. And then if you need weeks, months to finalize your decision, I don't blame you. It's usually thousands of dollars.
It's a big decision, but we're here to help. And guys, one of the only ways that we can continue doing videos like this is by you hopping on our website, supporting us over there. It's Arkayne.com. Grab some units if it's in your budget. If you need help, we're happy to help out. We want to change culture. We want to equip people. We want to see people better prepared to protect themselves, their communities, but also be more effective with the tools that they have. So again, if you found this helpful, let us know. And guys, we're going to continue smoking these cigars, having some fun out here at Site B. We will catch you in the next one.